Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Joshing Around Milwaukee. As always, my name is Josh Albrecht, and with me is...
Hey, it's Josh Albrecht.
That's right, Josh Albrecht and Josh Albrecht. And we have a very special guest with us today, Mia Phifer, the Senior Education, Collections, and Outreach Coordinator for America's Black Holocaust Museum and the Milwaukee Museum Days committee member.
Some fun. Two Joshes are better than one. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Two Joshes having some fun. 'Cause two Joshes are better than one.
Mia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it's really exciting to have you join us today. Lots to talk about, museum and museum days, and just in general how Milwaukee's feeling for you, and I think we'll have a lot of fun today.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we just read off in that title. So let's start with the museum itself. Tell us a little bit about, the museum, what you do with the museum, and let's start there.
Okay, cool. I have been with America's Black Holocaust Museum since 2018, straight out of the UW Milwaukee Museum Studies, History, Public History, Nonprofit Management programs. And so I was part of that core team to help it reopen. And America's Black Holocaust Museum is distinctive in that it was founded by one of the only known survivors of lynching in United States history. We say one of the only known because there could be others. They probably just weren't as forthright with telling their story the way Dr. Cameron was. But Dr. Cameron, after surviving that lynching at only 16 years old, dedicated the rest of his life to civil rights causes. He founded several chapters of the NAACP. He wrote a memoir called A Time of Terror, which is one of a kind, one of the only memoirs of a lynching survivor ever written. And he even mortgaged his house a couple times to make sure that that word was out and to make sure that that was published. And then also used some of that mortgage money to found the museum in 1988 right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so he actually was on his way to Canada because his family was getting a lot of death threats on his home. And they were like, we need to get out of here. We need to go somewhere safer. So we're going to Canada and stopped in Milwaukee for what was going to be one night and ended up staying for the rest of his life right here in the city. So really found that community and that cause that he wanted right here. And the museum he founded from 1988 and all the way until his death in 2006. And then 2 years later, due to the Great Recession, the museum actually closed. Fortunately, there was a dedicated group of volunteers who would make sure that Dr. Cameron's dream would live on, his legacy would not just die. And so they created the virtual museum, which launched in 2012, very early internet still, and very early in the timeline of when people were actually thinking of museums as virtual spaces, right? They're known as for the physical objects and for these physical spaces that you go to and be in community with each other. They're like, we can have this international reach. We can get online. We can keep his legacy alive that way until we have the money for a brick and mortar again. And we finally reopened ABHM February 25th, 2022 after 14 years of closure on what would have been Dr. Cameron's 108th birthday. And we had over 800 people show up on that day. During COVID still, yeah. People still wary of being around each other and during a snowstorm. And so I think he would be really, really proud to see it come back and then the community really rally around it and be ready to receive his message once again.
Yeah, and I was there that day, and I remember that. Yeah, it was so cold, and you have the tent outside, and people did not care because It was such a momentous day for it to reopen. Such a great day of celebration, seeing the community come together. It was really a wonderful day, and now it's this great neighborhood and city. Cornerstone is how we really view it, and here at Visit Milwaukee, we love to tell the story and bring journalists through to help tell the story, and we'd love to see it as one of the key institutions to draw visitors and help people be educated about our community and the country.
Absolutely, yeah, and I do want to add there, I usually do this when I do my tours at the museum, but there was an article at the end of Dr. Cameron's life, one of the last interviews he ever did. And in it, he kind of said, it's been 2 weeks and nobody's come through the door. He felt like he was really trying really hard to get this message across that a lot of people weren't ready to receive yet. And so I really like to compare kind of that time of his life to the over 800 people showing up in 2022, I think after George Floyd, and I think after this really great racial awakening that we had as a country, that people were finally ready to receive his message and to come to the museum and to learn from the things that he dedicated his life to teaching about.
Yeah, that's so true. And it is a great community gathering place as well. I've been to some really lovely events, networking nights, and different group gatherings there. So it is a community connecting place as well. One of the things I really like is the storytelling and the story capturing of the museum. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been capturing other people's stories and preserving those stories for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Cameron was a griot. We call our docents griots. Griots is the French given name to the West African storytellers. That's what it translates to, is storyteller. And Dr. Cameron was kind of was the museum, right? People went there to hear his story, to hear from him firsthand, his experience of surviving this lynching, the story of his life. And so now we have other griots that we've trained to give tours, and they really bring them full selves to the museum as well, tell their stories. Miss Maxine was actually a griot under Dr. Cameron, gave tours at the old museum, and now she's come back and she's giving tours at the new museum, and she grew up in Bronzeville, in that area around the museum, and so talks about her own life story as well. And then we've also, our board members and our volunteers, we've interviewed all of them and tried to collect their stories. And then we also, if someone comes into the museum and they say, hey, I remember Dr. Cameron, I met him, I came to this original museum, we sit them down and we try to record their story as well, try to keep him alive as much as we can in the memory of people who knew him. I personally never had the opportunity to meet him, which is super unfortunate. So I kind of hear about him from others in the community who keep his memory alive and come back and are willing to share their stories.
I bet sometimes you feel like you did meet him.
I read his memoir every year. It's kind of like the museum Bible.
Yeah.
We do discuss it in our book club every February too, and I reread it, and every time I find something new, that memoir is definitely something everybody should read. School children, high schoolers. It's written in a very accessible way. It's almost like your grandfather sharing his life story with you. So again, that storyteller thing, that memoir is just an incredible resource for us to have, and for him to have, taken the time to write it down right after the lynching happened. He started taking notes, and so it's very vivid with the ordeal that he had to survive.
Yeah, it's such a powerful, moving experience, and sort of going through sort of a timeline experience as you go through, and sort of there's elements of tourism in there as well from our perspective with the Green Book and some of the history there. It's just, and then the locals, sort of like local history, some of the famous people who helped put Milwaukee on the map and how they were influenced by Milwaukee. That's always a fun section of the museum as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's your biggest surprise when people come in for the local historical figures? I'm sure there's some people who are like, this person's from Milwaukee?
Oh, yeah. Well, Oprah, I don't know how much she claims Milwaukee. I don't hear her talk about Milwaukee that much as she maybe should. But, I mean, she did grow up here. John Ridley, 12 Year Slave, and then he has the No Studios here as well. Obviously, I think it's... when you have these national known figures and you're like, oh, they're from Milwaukee, but it's also cool to talk about the contributions that Milwaukeeans have made that they're lesser well known, such as Val Phillips and modeling the fair housing legislation around that. Lloyd Barbie, some of these local civil rights figures that really help form the national movement too. So at the museum, we start in Africa, so pre-captivity, and then it goes all the way up to Black Lives Matter movement. But throughout, it's a national story, but you see Milwaukee woven through each piece of the section. So Milwaukee is the nation is Milwaukee.
Yeah, love that. Is there plans for any sort of exhibit changes, anything new in the coming year?
I was going to say, yeah, because you talked a little bit about how when other people come in and just the museum continues to grow, which is cool, right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't want to see the same museum if you're going to it like year in, year out, and it's the same thing. So I love that there are changes. But to Josh's point, is there anything new and exciting we should be looking out for?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I always tell people when they come to the museum, because they're like, oh, where's this, where's that, where's this? We have a very small footprint, but I like to pitch the physical museum as a foundation. It's a beginning. It's a foundation for further learning and understanding. Obviously, we can't fit everything in there. It's in the physical footprint that we have, but it'll really introduce you to all the different eras of history that are related to slavery, Civil War, civil rights, and the things Dr. Cameron was really dedicated to sharing about. But the virtual museum is infinite. It's over 3,400 pages of content, and so that's updated daily. Wow. Whenever we do there's something going on in Milwaukee or there's a traveling exhibit, we'll always try to also emphasize something on there so we can reach the world actually with whatever's going on in our little space. And so we really try not to neglect the virtual space, for especially considering that it kept us alive and in business for 14 years while the physical museum was closed. And then we're also doing a lot of traveling exhibits to bring in the space, get people to come back. And then we did buy a building that's right across the street from us that's going to quadruple our footprint. And so that's classroom space, office space, auditorium space, so we can do a lot more programming than what we can do in our small space right now. And then I do also want to say that it's just 3M tape, the exhibits, and so they were always made to be updated. Because as we know, history is happening every day. Black history is happening every day. And so we were very cognizant. And then also historical research is happening every day. There's always updates to different eras. We're always continually learning about different eras in history. And so when they made the 3M tape with the actual physical exhibits, they were meant to be updated, reprinted, and put back up on the walls. So we're always going to be updating and keeping up with the times. So
that's great.
And it seems like a perfect opportunity to see the new things is going to be during Museum Days, which is going to be here before we know it. And you, as we mentioned before, committee member for that. Can you tell us a little bit what we should be expecting for Museum Days and the people that haven't taken advantage of it yet, what it's all about?
Yeah, Milwaukee Museum Days is awesome. It actually started out of Museum Week from dedicated museum people. I don't know if it's museums everywhere, but I know Milwaukee museums are super collaborative, and I've always loved that. I know museum people are, but I feel like in Milwaukee we're especially collaborative with each other across our museums. And so it was a really cool way to come together. Also, January is very slow for museums. It's kind of like the Monday of the museum world. And so to get people to come here and come to our museums when it's cold, again, the February reopening at ABHM, we know people will show up when it's cold. And so kind of giving a promotion, a discounted rate, and then also not just that, like, oh, because you'll build it, they'll come. We're going to try to really do some cool programming that's collaborative, that brings our museums together, and that also really gets people from outside of Milwaukee to come and take advantage of the awesome 30-something plus museums that always participate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really been a growing program for us. In 2025 will be part of Hotel Month too, so hopefully people can take advantage of getting a great hotel deal, go to multiple museums.
Package it all together, bundles.
Yeah.
Bundles,
Yes.
people. We got bundles going
right.
on. That's right.
But there's several great historical museums in town, and so it's a great opportunity for people of all ages to come and learn and see some great attractions. And maybe even explore the Bronzeville neighborhood a little bit as well, and historic MLK Drive. There's lots of great restaurants along the way, so you can really make it a full day experience, going to the museum, going to the shops, going to the restaurants.
Go to multiple museums.
Go to multiple museums. It's really a really fantastic opportunity. How do you see that growing in the future? Do you see the public museum is going to be growing soon? How do you see the future of museums in Milwaukee taking shape?
Like I said, that collaborative piece really coming together, I think kind of sharing experiences, speaking to one another. For instance, America's Black Holocaust Museum, we often partner with the Wisconsin Black Historical Society and Museum to show people that the stories we tell are more powerful together. We also do a collaborative tour with the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and so students can really see how museums work, how they relate to one another. And so, yeah, I think the future of museums is just more and more collaboration, more shared experiences, coming together to serve the public in a joint way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So Milwaukee's got a lot of momentum, not just in museums, but all around. So we'd love to ask everybody, what's giving you fresh city vibes? What's the thing you are, not getting enough of, the thing you keep going back to right now in this moment?
I wanted to say the Brewers, but then my heart got broken again.
That's right.
We went to over 40-plus games this last time. We had the ballpark pass. We go all the time.
Yeah.
So I would just love a World Series win. That's all, Milwaukee.
You and me both.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
No, but that's sports, obviously. We're a sports city. The museums. I love the lake. There's just so much to do. It's just a little hidden gem of a city. I've always been about Milwaukee, and also our history. I say the history is always so rich, and it's being discovered, and our museums are a really big part in preserving that and communicating that to the world, to people that come to Milwaukee for conferences, that come to Milwaukee for our sports teams. And so to stop by a museum on your way, I think museums are really, like you said, the Milwaukee Public Museum too, getting a revitalization and a new home. I think all of that is dedicated to preserving the history that's right here in Milwaukee and making sure it's preserved and people can see it when they come and visit.
Oh, yeah. Part of being a museum employee is being a concierge, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm sure 100%. So many people who come in, they're like, where should we go next?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Have you curated your favorites of Milwaukee to share?
We have a list at the front now because people always ask that, where do we eat? And it's really cool when people come from out of town. They're like, we really want to stay in that area where the museum is, what's around there. So Pepper Pot, Honey Pot, I think that's what it's called, right? Honey Pot, the tea. No, Pepper Pot, Honeybee Sage, and Pepper Pot are right over there. We send people to Bronzeville Collective as well. There's lots of really cool things on that MLK corridor that connects you right to downtown too that we send people all along there.
Yeah, That's awesome. That's
and also send them to a lot of other museums after. I'm like, if you're not museumed out, we can send you to the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, the Wisconsin Black Historical Society and Museum. There's the Milwaukee County Historical Society. A lot of these like little kind of hidden gems. That
you have like a little reciprocal opportunity with the museums?
We should, yeah. Well, what we do right now is our joint tour. I'm really trying to develop in that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I know other
stamp card,
cities.
you know, like a get a stamp.
Passport.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Man, can we trademark that?
Let's do it.
Museum
I think we
passport.
talked about that for Museum Days. I don't know. If
I don't think you did. I think we just started right
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's been on the Museum Days committee's docket list, is to kind of get it kind of like the pub pass.
Yeah.
That you guys used to do, or I think you still do now. It's just app form.
Yeah.
We're doing that for like museums. And then for conferences too, I think that's on the horizon too, is having museums partner more with the conferences that visit Milwaukee and gets people to come in, and then making sure they know we're here and can come and visit us.
All right. So if a visitor only has, and I'm sure this has happened, they come in and they're like, we really wanted to see the museum, but we've only got 15 minutes. Is there something that you're always like, hey, if you've only got 15 minutes, don't miss this element because it's so moving, or don't miss this thing because it's really powerful?
Yeah, well, you've been there, so you're going to know exactly what I'm referencing. It's the tree in the middle. This is where we tell Dr. Cameron's story. It's kind of an artistic tree, and it's very strategically placed right in the middle of the museum because it's the heartbeat of the museum. And under that tree, you'll see the story of the lynching Dr. Cameron survived, along with that very iconic photograph. Usually when I say lynching photograph, it's the one people are picturing with the two boys hanging in the back, and then the guy in the front pointing back, kind of like very kind of proud of what he's done. That was actually the lynching that Dr. Cameron survived, and a lot of people don't know that. And then that photograph actually inspired a Jewish man named Abel Maripol to write the poem Bitter Fruit, which became Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday. So when you look at that photograph and when you understand Dr. Cameron's story, you see his direct connection to this iconic protest song and to this iconic lynching photograph that most people do recognize, and a lot of people don't know that a third man survived that lynching, and that it is connected to this Billie Holiday's iconic protest song too. So,
incredible! This is an incredible story.
Yeah, you have to leave knowing that. If you come to the museum, you have to leave knowing at least that to answer your question. Yeah.
That's a great answer, by the way.
Great.
Like that was the solid. If there's one thing, I was like, oh well, you could maybe. No, that's
that
it.
One. No, I know.
That's the
I know
one.
what the heartbeat of the museum is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Being more of an educational and difficult subject matter at times for people coming through. Part of a museum experience, though, is the gift shop, the thing you take away. How do you walk that line of being respectful, but also making sure someone has a keepsake? Yeah,
so we actually do have a postcard that has the iconic building on it. You know, our architecture from the outside is very iconic. It was kind of in the middle of a neighborhood that had a lot of boarded up housing, a lot of gated, like on the front doors, like getting buzzed in. And so when the museum was designed, it was very intentionally designed to be open, inviting, a lot of windows, come on in, this is your space too. And so having that kind of exterior on the postcards to invite people to come visit us too works on a couple levels. We have our t-shirts, our Juneteenth t-shirts. Our Juneteenth merch can be a little bit more uplifting and celebratory because that holiday is more celebratory. And so we have our iconic colors on our ABHM t-shirt. People love the t-shirts. We have mugs, and we also have totes that says griot, and it defines what a griot is, storyteller. And so we try to do something that'll, if you're out using it, people are going to be like, oh, what's that? And then you can tell them. But yeah, we don't do a lot of kind of the frivolous stuff in our gift shop. It's always going to have that deeper meaning and deeper connection to our mission.
Well, I love it, and there's not going to be a better time to go than during the Museum Days, which is going to be from January 23rd through February 2nd. And just one of the many museums that people will be able to take advantage of. And if you haven't gone to, and I mean, there's not a lot of people have been to all of them. So there's going to be something for everyone during that time. But definitely go and check out ABHM, as you said. Is there the website for the virtual tour? Can you give that to us?
Yep, www.abhmuseum.org.
Love it. Love it so much. Mia, thank you.
34,000?
34,000 pages of content.
Yeah, good reason, Josh.
Yeah. Give me like 2 days. Just a few days.
The learning will never end. The learning will never end.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mia. We really, really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
And thank you guys for watching this. If you missed this episode, the last episode, or any episode, make sure to just scroll down and you can watch the next one. And tune in next time because we are not done yet. Thanks so much.